Lonely Monk Productions. I don't know if y'all have heard Future Sucks by the Bad Ups yet, but yo,
that's my Jawn!
Hey yo, displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. You're tasting things that don't need to be measured. You ain't being What's good, friends and family, neighbors near and far? Welcome to an all-new episode of the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast. The podcast, website, brand, movement, way of life dedicated to the embrace and championing of your passions. I'm your host, Nate Runkle, a.k.a. Jawn Varvatos, a.k.a. Nate 3.0, back at it again with yet another episode of the podcast. As always, I hope this podcast finds you all in good health and in good spirits. On today's episode, I am joined by documentarian Kristi Jacobson for a chat about her latest film, Louder, the Soundtrack of Change, which is a beautiful look at protests through song by women throughout the history of contemporary music that is now streaming on Max. We talk about that, her life in documentaries, and more, and that's coming up in a bit. But first, hey, my friends, how is our fall going? It's cold, it's hot, it's cold, it's hot. It can't make up its mind, can it? Every time I think it's time to pack away the shorts and pull out the winter garments, the sun goes not so fast, dum-dum. Goodness gracious. But things are going fantastic, for it is the most wonderful time of the year. That is right. This week is the Philly Music Fest. 23 bands across 6 venues celebrating Philly artists and Philly music. There are some great lineups. I am most looking forward to the Friday and Saturday shows featuring some favorites as well as pals and former guests. You know, Friday at Milk Boy, we got Catbite, Reef the Lost Cause, Koofnots and Christina Lease, and Queasy. And then on Saturday, it's Devin Gilfillian, Mondo Cosmo, The Tisberries, and Emily Drinker. I will definitely be at both of those. So if you're there, be sure to say hey. Tickets for those events and the rest of the shows that include Amos Lee and Waxahachie are available at phillymusicfest.com. Well, not that Waxahachie show. That Jawn sold all the way out. But the others, there are still some tickets available. I also want to mention that Saturday, the 26th, during the day, is Inside Hustle at Rec Philly, which is an incredible Philly music networking event that gets emerging artists and industry professionals together. And that's also presented by the Philly Music Fest in coordination with WXPN. And y'all, I will be at the podcast table alongside my pals Dan Drago from 25 O'Clock and Phil Reese from Your Next Favorite Band. So if you are a musician or someone looking to get your start in the music industry, you will not want to miss this event. Visit phillymusicfest.com/inside hustle for tickets and more info. And, you know, while you're visiting things on the internets, don't forget to check out www.yothat'smyjawn.com, your one-stop shop for all things Yo, That's My Jawn. Links to the socials, the mailing list, merchandise, the webpage, all that goodness. You know the routine. Okay, we got all that out of the way. Let's get into it. My guest today is an Emmy Award-winning director, producer, and the founder of Catalyst Films, whose films capture nuanced, intimate, and provocative portrayals of individuals and communities. Her latest film, Louder, the Soundtrack of Change, is both a celebration of music and a rallying cry. Produced by Selena Gomez and Stacey Abrams, the documentary takes audiences on a journey across generations, eras, and genres, anchored by a female chorus of musical icons whose songs, voices, and activism provided inspiration for the past and current fight for equality for all, and is now streaming on Max. Folks, it is my honor to welcome to the show, Kristi Jacobson. Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined today by the great Kristi Jacobson. Kristi, thank you for joining me on Yo, That's My Jawn.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So I don't know if you're familiar with the term Jawn. It's Philly slang for any person, place, or thing. You seem familiar. So this started out as kind of a Philly-centric podcast, and I always try to find weird little angles to make it still play that way. And I got two just based on research, was one, I knew you did the documentary on Toots Shor, but I didn't realize that that was your grandfather. So you've got Philly family roots. And then also the place at the table has a Philly section in it as well. So look at that. I can bring it all back.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Yeah, right when you said Philly, I was like, "Hey, this is going to go well because my roots go back to 1903, South Philly." Yeah.
Heck yeah. So see, born and bred, we'll count that. This is still a Philly podcast, ladies and gentlemen. So for my listeners, tell them a little bit about yourself, like growing up when you were a kid. Where did you grow up?
Okay. I grew up. I was born in New York, New York, and I grew up in the suburbs. And I I my childhood experience of living in a house with a yard on a street where I could ride my bike and all of those things was great, and it also like just really informed me eventually of so many who don't have that, and yeah, so that's kind of how I'm always framing everything, it seems.
Sure. I mean, it is really interesting to like kind of look back at your own childhood that, you look at some of your own struggles and I always like to call mine little T traumas and stuff like that. And, you don't like to play the comparison game, but you're just like, hey, maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe maybe I did work it out. Here's my question also, based on my half-ass internet research, which is, you end up going to Duke for college, is that correct?
Correct.
For sociology and criminology. So how does this pivot to documentarian come in?
Yeah, so that's a question I love answering, and especially because I just got invited and spoke to sociology students at Duke this year and told them that every time someone asked me like, why do you make documentaries? What was it that drew you to making documentaries? And it was specifically, I kind of look at the world like through a sociologist lens, right? Like what is going on systemically and systematically and then within community and family, et cetera. And but when I went to college, I came from the Northeast and I went to the South. I saw how much more confronted I was by overt racism, not towards me, but towards people of color in the South than what I had experienced in the Northeast. And I also was, in studying criminology, I wound up studied specifically juvenile justice, the juvenile justice system, and I put that in quotes for anyone who's listening because there's no justice really involved. It's injustice, and I interned in a courthouse shadowing what's called a juvenile counselor, so essentially an attorney for young people who were involved in the court system. And I saw firsthand how broken it is, how Black and brown and poor people are treated. And I thought, having come from where I came from, if everybody knew about this, right, we could fix it. So I that was the beginning of a long journey for me, and I felt like storytelling and using my privilege to try and expose what I can that is wrong, so that we can fight for less wrong and more right and more justice.
For sure. And like it's amazing because you kind of jumped right into like some intense stuff with American Standoff, which for the listeners who don't know was about the Teamsters strike against was it Overnight, the trucking
Yeah.
company. I work my daytime is in logistics, so like this is right up my alley or whatnot. Not that we have a union at my place, but listen,
Okay.
folks, if you are, but no, but so like, I guess, how do you even get started? Like the jump from sociology to documentarian makes sense to me because it is still studying people and it is still studying society and, systemic issues and whatnot. But how do you even approach making a film, from that experience?
Yeah. I mean, well, for me, I didn't go to film school, right? I studied sociology, and my film school was working were my jobs. I was a production assistant, and the minute I was on set or on location, I just was like, this is my opportunity to learn. So what is the DP doing? What is the sound person doing? What is the director doing? What is the producer doing? How are they all working together? These are real people. How are their lives being affected? How are people interacting with them? So I was fortunate in that I was able to get work as a production assistant. And back then, this was the 90s. I was fortunate to work on some TV specials that were about HIV and AIDS at a time when it was not common to be talking about heterosexual transmission of HIV and AIDS, and where the gay community was definitely facing some really serious discrimination. And I got to be a part of some of these TV shows that were documentaries, and I just got to see how it all works. And from there, I ultimately sent many faxes, which is revealing my age for people who don't know what that is. It preceded emails, and to Barbara Koppel, who had a production company called Cabin Creek Films, and I was really fortunate to get hired on a project there. And it was with Barbara that I was really given the opportunity to direct the film that became American Standoff for HBO, with whom I've had a long-standing relationship with that started then. And the film we're here to talk about is going to be on Max, which is also HBO. So yeah, and I, waking up at 4 a.m. with Teamsters who are on the picket line is a really great induction, or what is it? Introduction, or what is that word? Yeah, into like the challenges and hardship and realness of and importance of authenticity in documentary filmmaking.
Yeah. You mentioned the relationship with HBO, leading us to Louder, which is exactly what we're here to talk about today. Louder, the soundtrack of change, out October 17th, which is in the past when this airs, but by 2 or 3 days. But I always confuse myself with this. But so, social justice is an ongoing theme throughout all of your work, not just what you have directed yourself, but also what you've, produced and helped create and stuff like that. How did this project come about?
So this project originated with, which is revealed in the film, but Stacey Abrams and Selena Gomez formed a friendship, met each other, and formed a friendship during in the run up to the 2020 election. And those are two pretty powerful trailblazers in different fields, but who also felt that they wanted to make a film. They wanted to do something more that celebrated the power of music and protest music and women and art and activism. And so they were really the genesis. And I got brought onto the project through our production company, Make Entertainment. And when I got that call, I was like, I am here for this. So that was in the spring of 2022. So this project, has been in production really, for almost 3 years.
It's an incredible film, and I implore people to check it out. One of the things that I think that makes it as incredible as it is that to me, and in your personal opinion, it doesn't go for what I would call like the obvious artists that you would expect as being, kind of protest music or anything like that. It goes for artists who are their genuine selves, and their genuine self is an expression of protest just in their creativity itself. Was that by design, or was that just like these are the people I want to talk to?
Yes, and I mean, maybe saying I love you for saying that sounds strong. But Yes. I mean, I think that like when we set out, the process of making a 1 hour documentary, that with a mission to celebrate, the artists and songs of protest and movements throughout time is a really daunting task. And I think that, what I mentioned earlier is like authenticity is like the most important piece of any film that I'm a part of. I was fortunate to be a producer on a film called An Act of Worship that was directed by Nosheen Dadaboy, who's the cinematographer of this film. And and that film told the story, her story, and the story of Muslim Americans from her youth, which was in the 80s and 90s through today. And there was just something about how authentic that was that made me feel it was too important not to get made and not to get seen. And I mention that because here we are today and we have all of these artists, right? All of these songs, and what are we going to do about it? And ultimately, it was this really organic process of reaching out to artists, you know, obviously superstar music performers are touring, they're busy, right? And then there were these ones that rose up, right? These artists that were like, I'm here for this. And when they showed up for that interview, they were completely present. And it was also an opportunity for us to interview people across generations. So we have the artist known as Her, and we have Shaka Khan, we have Melissa Etheridge, and we have Kathleen Hanna, and we have the amazing Rhiannon Giddens, who I didn't know about before making this film, which I'm ashamed to admit. And her work is extraordinary. And so across genres, and across generations. And there was just this pull, right? It was just like this two-way pull that happened. And when we got these women into the studio or onto the set, it was kind of electric. And hopefully you can feel that.
I think one of the things that stood out to me is and another one of those, I'm not going to say I came with expectations, but definitely exceeded my expectations, was the inclusion of Linda Ronstadt to discuss her Spanish album, which is a perfect example of kind of what I was getting at, which is not something you would tend to think of as like a protest, but is something that, is kind of defiant of what is defined as a female pop star in, at that time period, even now, to
Yes.
be honest.
Yes. No, I love that you mentioned that because I literally was like, I didn't just mention Linda Ronstadt. and and it's so that story is so emblematic of what we hope this film is for people, right? So it's not just about the iconic protest song, um, but it is about the daily acts of protest. I mean, sadly, it's protest when a woman is standing up for herself, or sadly, it's protest when a woman when Linda Ronstadt wants to make a album that is entirely Spanish and honors her Mexican roots, right? It shouldn't be protest, but an act of protest, but it is. And so we wanted to celebrate those acts, both small and large, right? That speak to this and the importance of women um, elevating each other when this happens.
Yeah, and like the sad parallel, almost, if you will, to contemporary times, where you mentioned Rhiannon Giddens, and you got Mickey Guyton in there, who literally are just trying to make a style of music that speaks to them, and have nothing but struggles to do so, just based on being African American. And I'll even add this. I think being a woman also plays into that as well, because I mean, that whole genre of is I was talking to somebody about, I forget who I was talking to, is somewhat of a ticking time bomb on its own, without all of that. But like the timeliness of having this conversation when Beyonce gets nominated for what, 0 CMAs and whatnot, with one of the biggest albums of the year, if not the past 5 years. it's disturbing the cycle, that just continues, much like Linda Ronstadt's Spanish speaking album.
Yeah, I think, I mean, one of the things I was thinking about and talking about earlier, not with you, but anyway, in a conversation, was that like I kind of feel like I like inhabit these two worlds, right? One is of despair and outrage, and the other is like hope and action. And I think that like the stories in this film kind of fill all those buckets at the same time. And when Mickey Guyton agreed to participate in the film, I mean, that was such an opportunity to bring her story and her experience in 2023 and 2024, right? As a Black woman trying to create music within the country music genre, right? And then being able to go all the way back to learn about and unpack the story of Linda Martell, whose story I didn't know. And I think it's Jay Wortham who says in the film, who's just like an awesome journalist and voice and human. They say, this isn't about the story of Linda Martell. For those who don't know, she was a Black female country music artist whose career was ultimately shut down. I won't do all the spoilers, right? And she had to move on. And what Jay says is, it's not because she didn't have the talent or she didn't have the strength or she didn't have the courage. It's because the system was trying to break her, right? It was devised to break her. And so the more we can unpack that and reveal that and expose that, hopefully the more we are breaking that system. And Rhiannon Giddens is an extraordinary storyteller, musician, and reclaimer of the narrative for Black musicians within country music and within many genres where they've been left out.
Yeah, I mean, you incredibly lucked out with the people you got to speak to. You mentioned Kathleen Hanna, and that was an exciting point for me because, contrary to gender, I have always loved the Riot Girl movement. It's always just been something that I've been like, hell yeah, and like it just and beyond the movement itself, the music is just awesome. Like I fucking love Bikini Kill. So like, but I was happy to see like that representation too, which is, another genre that just kind of for way too long kind of stifled female creativity and inclusion in that art form.
Yeah, no, I mean, when Kathleen Hanna similarly agreed to participate, or when the stars aligned, because lots of people agreed to participate, but the stars have to align, right? For that to actually happen, for us to get in the room with our, with our team and make the interview happen. And, what an incredible opportunity to shine a light on the Riot Girl movement, on moments. Again, like you were saying before, when Linda Ronstadt said, "I will make this album," right? That's not a protest song, right? When Kathleen Hanna said, "Women to the front, girls to the front, girls to the front," right? That's a moment in which she doesn't know that 20, 30, 40 years later, that's going to be a pivotal moment, right? She's making space for girls and women, and it was important then, but seeing that now in the context of today, right? I think that was what was really cool about making this film, is like every month it felt like the stakes had changed, they'd increased, things had shifted, and we were seeing things in a slightly different light, up to and including the moment where Tracy Chapman and Luke Combs walk onto the in March of 2024 in the I think it was March for the Grammys, right? And we're in the edit, and we're editing, and because Stacey Abrams had talked about the impact that Tracy Chapman and her music had on her, and like this like kind of iconic moment happens. So yeah, it was so anyway, back to Riot Girl, just like to look at Bikini Kill, to look at a song like, to be able to unpack a song like Rebel Girl, and do that from the context of today felt um, really special. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I'm glad you mentioned the Tracy Chapman Luke Combs thing because, and I forget who exactly called attention to it, but one of the things that look, I'm not going to pretend like I'm this enormous Luke Combs fan, but one of the things I really appreciated with his cover was not changing the pronouns. Which
Yes.
is something that I like. I'm a musician. I play out, and when I used to cover songs, I would never change the pronouns because, like, it's part of how the song is written. It's part of the artistry. It's part of what you love about the song. And to like change it is just some weird kind of overhang of just like, ew, icky. I can't. I don't know. It never made sense to me. But I was so glad that someone kind of pointed that out in the in
Yeah, I
that
think it
cover.
might have been Jay Wortham again. Yeah, and I agree that you don't want to, I think it was important in the film not to say like, and this is the happy ending, right?
Right.
White man country singer and Tracy Chapman come together and all is great, because that is not true, right? I mean, all is not great, obviously.
Well.
And so um, but to also highlight the aspects of that moment, right, that were really important in the context of Tracy Chapman and her music, and the fact that she wrote many songs, but specifically that we highlight in the film, talking about a revolution and Fast Car in 1988, I think it is. And each of those songs just, I just want to shout them off the rooftops today. So it was a great, this film was just like, there were moments of magic, right? And when they came out for the film, it created an opportunity for us. And I'm really grateful for that. Yeah.
Yeah. All of the positive, I'll ask one negative question. Who said no? Was there anybody that said no, or was it just scheduling? Because you had mentioned, the stars aligning.
I mean, I'm just the director. So
That's fair.
and I make documentaries, which means we take what we have shot, and we then in the edit room, and our editor Chris Hurdy was extraordinary. We make a film from what we got, and we don't cry about what we didn't get.
That's fair. That's fair. I'll take it. So a creative choice, and I don't know if it was you or in editing, but I'm going to guess it was you. You directed the film or whatnot. The choice to use duality a lot stood out to me as well, particularly in kind of the starting with oh God, now I can't even remember which one it starts with. But when you go through the protest movements in retroactively, and just kind of switch from one panel to the next all the way back to 68 and whatnot, I thought was incredibly powerfully moving. Like I just thought I mean, it shows that like meet the new boss, same as the old boss, almost like
Yeah,
the fight
yeah.
never ends. You know what I mean? But not in a negative way. Just like, hey, we're still here and we're still going. We're still fighting, and we're still going to try to make this world a better place than it was the screen before.
Yeah, no, I think that I mean, you raised like what was again like one of our big hopes, and it emerged in the editing process, right? Like it's like, like we're working with her and her song "I Can't Breathe," and right before that, we were editing Nina Simone singing "Mississippi Goddamn," and like yes, we have storyboards and outlines and all of that, but it's like, what's the stuff that like we're really feeling? And I think putting together those, like, I think they were diptychs, and then they went from diptychs and became those really awesome kind of slideshows. But it was really important. And I'd say that the first interview we shot for this film was with Rhiannon Giddens. And one of the things she said is, I'm sitting here living a pretty darn good life. And what do I owe my ancestors? What do I owe the women who came before me? And then she goes on and she says, I think we have a responsibility. And that was our North Star, right? And so that kind of is what inspired that graphic treatment. And they're also really awesome people who created those graphics that are not me.
It's incredible, and that Rhiannon quote is brilliant too, because it reminds me. I don't know if you're familiar with Mariah Parker. They're a performer and activist out of Athens, Georgia.
No,
Absolutely
I'm writing it
phenomenal.
down.
Their art or their music is released under the name Linka Franca.
Okay.
It's incredible stuff. But they were on the show, and I said, how do you stay positive? How do you stay optimistic in the fight, because of just how much shit just continues to go on? And they said, I'm not going to see the change, but maybe my child will, and maybe their child will. And so like looking to our ancestors, but also looking to the future, like, is just such a beautiful thing. And I think that's one of the things that Louder does incredibly in this is, it doesn't just romanticize the past and just say, here's everything that was happening. It shows how it continues and will continue on.
Yeah, I really appreciate that reaction. And everybody's going to take something different from the film, but I do hope that the idea that like protest or resistance or fighting for change or having a voice doesn't always mean, writing a song, performing it that becomes known throughout time as as an iconic song, right? That sometimes it's the small decisions that you make that might be a business decision or a decision in the moment to call out someone who's who's discriminating or being racist or whatever that might be. That those things matter too. And so we wanted to point out some of these, smaller or just these behind the scenes acts that also that women artists are consistently, I want to say forced to do, but choosing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an absolutely incredible film. Louder, the soundtrack of change, like I said, out on Max October 17th, or is out now. God, see, I always forget that.
Well, it's the Philly in you. I mean, what's the date?
What is it? Oh, tell me about it. Tell me about it. So I like to close all my interviews out with a questionnaire. The first half of this pretty rapid fire. Second half might take a little thought, but we'll try to burn through these because I know we got a time constraint for you. It's called the Jauntlet. And it starts with the one-hit wonders. And this is you're just picking who's your favorite. And that's why it'll be easy for us to burn through. These are music-based. But it starts with something simple. But being a New York person, I might already know this answer. Billy Joel or Elton John? Who do you prefer?
Oh, my God. Tiny Dancer, Elton John?
Okay, that's fair. That's acceptable. Though I don't know that people in New York will forgive you for that.
I know. But I like to disrupt.
Ah, there it is. I like
All
it.
Right.
Debbie Harry or Joan Jett?
Joan Jett.
Yeah, perfect answer. Also, Philly local. Aretha Franklin or Tina Turner?
This is impossible. Aretha.
Okay, good answer. There are no wrong answers except for the next one. Nirvana or Pearl Jam?
Oh God. Pearl Jam?
Okay, good answer. I like it. Yeah. It's a good answer. That's what I would have picked. Janis Joplin or Stevie Nicks?
Did you see Saturday Night Live the other night?
I haven't seen it yet. It's on my DVR. It's
Stevie Nicks right now, Saturday Night Live. Her new song is a song that she wrote about this moment. And I believe it's about reproductive rights and also Edge of 17 she performed.
Oh, incredible. Yeah. Absolutely incredible. Stevie Nicks won my heart when she did American Horror Story and played herself as a witch. It's like right here, right in the heart. The next one, the big cliche, Beatles or the Stones?
Stones.
Okay. Sounds
good.
I'm
a documentary and Gimme Shelter, one of the greatest documentaries. Yeah.
My God, how good is it? Like not what happened, but
no, but how good is
one
that?
of those It's one of those things where like I feel like all of the great documentaries that I've loved throughout my life are all just happy accidents that you just happened to be there when they went down, you know, like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Well, it's not
definitely
about where you weren't, it's about where you were,
where you
right?
were.
Yeah.
That's right. The last one of the one hit wonders, Bohemian Rhapsody or Stairway to Heaven?
Stairway to Heaven.
Good answer. Good answer. The second half is the top 10
Hey, what
countdown.
happens when you talk to someone and they're like, what are those? Like if they're
It's happened.
okay,
And
okay.
it's
That's
made me
not
feel
me.
old. It's made me feel
Yeah.
old. I've had to like walk off and come back and recollect myself with my walker.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, it's definitely like they were like, oh, I'm not really familiar, and I'm like, no, no, okay. The second half is the top 10 countdown. In this, like I said, Philly, we use Jawn to be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be music or anything, just whatever you want. But number one, what was your first Jawn? What was the first thing you were obsessed with when you were a kid?
Football.
Yeah. What's your
But
team?
unfortunately, we're not going to get along here.
That's
Yeah.
what I
It was
thought.
the New York Giants. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. I'll allow it.
Mhm.
The second one, what's your current Jawn? What are you into right now?
I'm struggling because I wish there was something fun I could say, but there's not. It's just like fighting the fight.
The
You know?
moment. No, that like it doesn't have to be fun.
It's like it's all the time. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, especially right now, few weeks out, it's I go back to this Henry Rollins quote that I heard one time, which is the greatest thing I've heard that has kept me alive since 2016. And that is, this is not the time to be dismayed. This is punk rock time. This is what Joe Strummer trained you for. And like it gives me chills because it's true. It's true. Never stop fighting.
Yeah.
Number three, what was your first concert, first live show you ever saw?
Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA.
How East Coast of you. It's awesome though.
How New Jersey of me in the Meadowlands, which well was
Oh,
called the Meadowlands then, right?
yeah, for sure. Number four, what was the last concert you went to?
The Civil Wars before they broke up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant. Who also did music for you, right? For
Yes.
very
Yeah.
nice. Very nice. Very nice. Number five, favorite concert you ever saw?
Metallica and Pearl Jam. No, Metallica and Guns N' Roses. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I remember that tour. Faith No
Guns N'
More, I
Roses
think
and
opened, right?
Metallica at Meadowlands. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Number six, who have you never seen live that you wish you would have? They could be living or dead.
Tracy Chapman.
Oh, brilliant answer. I'll tell you what, after watching Louder, Nina Simone, who I've always been a fan of, but
And Nina Simone. Yeah.
those live performances are just
Oh
something.
my
Same thing
God.
with Summer of Soul, her performance at
Yes.
Summer of Soul.
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully that film, Summer of Soul, like makes you feel like you were there that summer, right? Like, but
Yeah.
yeah, I wasn't.
Can't believe that whole thing. Yeah, I can't believe that whole thing was forgotten too, which is
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Number seven, name an unappreciated Jawn, something you wish people paid more attention to.
The little things.
Good answer. Very good answer. I like it. Number eight is normally I like to ask people their favorite album, but I'm going to do a little switcheroo for you. What's your favorite documentary?
Right now, shit, but people can't see it. There's a documentary I just saw called The New Wave that is remember the new wave music?
Yeah.
It's about Vietnamese immigrants and how valuable that music scene was for them. It's called The New Wave. It was really stunning.
That sounds phenomenal. That reminds me of I read this book about third wave ska, and they talked about how big the Latino ska movement was in LA during like the early 80s, which is something I never would have put together.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many stories that are not music related, but I'm finding out there are just so many ways in which music impacts people's literal lives, you know, their sense of self, their feelings of belonging, their ability to just continue day after day. And that was that anyway, the new wave. Yeah.
That's incredible. I'll gotta keep an eye out for that one.
Yeah.
Number nine.
Listen, I mean, one of my problems is honesty always. So I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
I like it. Number nine, name an artist who you'll consume anything they release.
I mean, Tracy Chapman. I know I'm overdoing that.
No.
But yeah. Yeah.
No, and you're definitely not overdoing it. And she's someone who has deserved the flowers she's now finally receiving, and like it's a beautiful thing to see. to me.
Yeah.
So there's no overdoing that ever to me. The 10th and final one, again, can be anything you want it to be. What's your favorite Jawn of all time?
Well, because we're on a Philly podcast, I will say that the story of Toots Shore is quite a Jawn.
That's incredible. I literally, if I could have done 2 hours on this because there's so much there, and there's so much about that time period too that like I think one of the things you did beautifully in that documentary is to tell a story. And actually, I think you do this very well without exploiting or romanticizing the negative aspects, I guess, or like you do a very brilliant job of turning an eye on something to have a conversation about it, not to just kind of show it, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah, I love it.
There it is. Bringing it back to Philly.
Bringing it back. I love it. Thank you so much. See, you keep it on brand as much as I do. Like I said, the documentary is Louder, the soundtrack of change. It's out on Max. Everybody check it out. Kristi, thank you so much for doing this. If anybody wants to, are you a social user? Do you use the socials? If anybody wants to track you down, how would they find you?
I do. I'm not so great at the socials. Yeah.
That's I've all but abandoned them, and
okay.
That's a conversation for another time. But
all right, cool.
But thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. What a fun Jawn it was.
My thanks again to Kristi for joining me on the show today. Louder, the soundtrack of change, is out now and is streaming on the Max streaming service. You can find more about Kristi Jacobson and her filmography at www.catalyst-films.com. Links to all of those are, of course, as always, in the show notes. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And guys, it is never too late to get yourself a super awesome Jawn Scout Merit Badge for Citizenship of the World just by rating and reviewing us. Don't forget to visit www.yothat'smyjawn.com for the link tree with links to articles, merchandise, all of the previous episodes of this podcast, guest appearances on other pods, and more. And while you are there, be sure to sign up for our mailing list to get all of the updates delivered straight into your inbox. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/YoThat'sMyJawn for updates and live streams. Follow us on Instagram, Threads, and Twitter X at Yo That's My Jawn, and search Yo That's My Jawn on YouTube to find the Yo That's My Jawn YouTube channel. Like and subscribe the heck out of that ish. We want to hear from you. Reach out, and touch some Jawn. All right, y'all. Thanks again for hanging out with me. It means a lot. And like I said, if you want to hang in person, come on out to Inside Hustle this weekend. It is gonna be a good-ass time. Blue skies. Until next time, everybody. That's my Jawn. Displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. You taste it, things that don't need to be measured. Yo, That's My Jawn is a Lonely Monk production. Written and produced by yours truly, Nate Runkle. Theme song by me, under the moniker Nate 3.0. Special thanks to Fox Run Brands, DX Ferris, Andrew Scott, Maggie Poulos, Dan Drago, Natalie Runkle, and the beautifully vibrant and wickedly stunning Katie Daubney. If you or anyone you know has any ideas they would like to share or any guests they would like to hear on the podcast, please feel free to reach out to us at yothat'smyjawn@gmail.com or hit us up on the socials at Yo That's My Jawn. Until next time, be sure to displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. Tilt your head back and shout to the world, Yo, that's my Jawn.